gonna show us talking and okay, we're still here. All right, righty. Tidy whitey.
Your coffee's gonna be hot.
Oh, nice. You're burning talking and okay. Okay. Here we are. Now I'm gonna start recording. Full screen. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning to you. It's good to be back. Okay.
Some chatties.
Yes.
Some
Thank
chatters this
you.
morning.
Such
Good
love.
morning.
Such love. Such love.
Good to see you all.
All right. Here we go. Let's get to recording.
Oh,
Hey, welcome back. Carlos and Chantel here with Epic Your Life, from single to married, creating extraordinary. That's what we do. We love helping couples to have extraordinary marriages.
and lives in general.
That's right.
Right.
Look, when it's good like this, when it's this good, and you love your wife's body so much, it's a good life. When you have a good wife, it's a good life.
Hold on.
So,
That's a whole nother ballgame. Oh gosh.
oh, it's so true though.
You're starting stuff already.
I know.
I know.
We had a wonderful time, a wonderful week. It's good to be back on here though. So
Yes, thank you for allowing us the grace to take a break. We had some time with our team down in Florida. Jesse and Anna Kaufman. It was an awesome time.
yes.
Creating, planning,
Next level,
yeah,
baby. It will affect
shifting,
everything we're
growing.
doing in the community. So it's good. We love our community, love our people, and we're glad that we get to work with the best of the best.
Meanwhile, back at the ranch.
Yeah, you said you had some thoughts and some
Yeah,
things you want
well,
to discuss today, huh?
life happens, right? Like there's always things that happen in life. We were having this conversation yesterday, after we got into Atlanta, and we were driving back home and just recognizing kind of the world that we live in right now, right? A return culture.
Yeah.
And so we were processing through a little bit of what that means, right? Because we work so closely with people who either want to be married, but they don't have the skills or the confidence to, right? They or they don't believe in marriage, right?
Yeah.
Because of their own examples. It's it's kind of like it's a mentality, it's a mindset, and really discovering like what that actually looks like in real life. So if we think of the return culture, we talk about the 3 C's of connection, right? Confidence, communication, and commitment. Those are major factors. And I was thinking about this return culture and how the 3 C's are missing.
Yeah.
The 3 C's are missing, like as a whole, right? So,
and I think it does narrow it down to, like, a lot of times we have people who are afraid to take a risk or afraid to do something. But what it really comes down to is the 3 C's, because they lack the confidence.
right.
And you have to almost help people to see that, because they have so much confidence typically in other areas of life. But when it comes to relationship, all of a sudden the excuses flood in. And well, that's where
but think about why it's a culture, right? Why, how has it become a culture of the easy return, or the like lack of risk, lack of investment, lack of commitment, is because it's so easy.
Tell me.
Like,
Yeah,
like
tell
if
me
we
about
think
what you
about
mean by return
like
culture.
on a practical level,
Mhm.
let's look at, the ability to buy something and return it if it doesn't work out, right? Amazon has magnified this tremendously. Like, we can go on Amazon, you have this long list of things you can buy, 5 shirts and try them all on at home, and then just, it's so easy. You go onto the app, you don't even have to talk to a person, and you can just return the other 4 that don't work, right? No attachment, no risk, no nothing. Like, there's no risk involved. So what does that mean, right? For our relationships.
Well, let's talk about this a little bit because you and I went through this even on a practical side of tools. I mean, it's real. It matters. This is so cool because, like, if we think about it, um, what was it? It was we were talking about what tool place was that?
Harbor Freight.
Harbor Freight, y'all. I used to say Harbor Freight is like my favorite store. I do enjoy it because they have so many tools and it's all about tools all in one place. Now, interesting fun fact about Harbor Freight. You can buy an insurance with them for a few dollars more, and it's no hassle return. So let's say I've got this tool I buy. Let's say this is like a big wrench or a power tool, even drill. Okay. And this thing goes bad on me. By the way, it's a no hassle return because it's going to go bad. All their tools are pretty much cheap as all get out from China. And I could see possibly having them if you're never going to use them. Like you just use them
Yeah, if
once
you're, I mean,
every
it's
10 years at your house or
if you're
something.
not a active
But
tool
those aren't the people
user.
that buy them. It's the people like I was that had a business, construction business, buying them for our team and things we needed for the projects. And I was super pumped. I bought and it's like for a tenth of the cost, or not even tenth, probably half the price of what like the brand or names. That's what I pitched to myself. Like the brand names, it's half the cost of the brand names, right? And I heard recently Layla Hermosi say this on a short, and she's right. Even free costs you.
Mhm.
You're mistaken. You don't realize it, but free costs you.
Mhm.
It does. So, with that said, and why I'm coming, I always do these big old things. I was like, can we land this thing? Can we get to the point? But this is true. I want you to stop and think about this. This is why. All the things that you are doing that's supposedly save you money, it's free, it's cheap, inexpensive. Dollar store is another one. Because I am an expert in this area because I did it for most of my life. Dollar store was huge. I mean, I was like, oh, look, all these things I could get for $1. There's a reason why you have to buy 10 of them. When otherwise you could buy 1 or 2 items, you buy 10 there because they have to be replaced so often because they're so cheap. Return society. This is real, like cheap return society.
Mhm.
And so the point I'm making,
Where's the point?
we forget about everything costs you. Everything. So where are you putting your time? That was the biggest thing that Chantel just opened my eyes to. My time spent there
Mhm.
buying more stuff, having to return it, having to, and believe me, I got to know that store really well because I was returning stuff all the time I'm talking about the tool store. So what's my time worth? What if I bought the tool once and used it for the whole time I had the projects for Tesla? That was when we were doing Tesla projects. The whole time instead of the multiple times I had to return it. And we're talking about big tools like jackhammers that got returned. We're talking about generators I had to return, and I was all happy. But what about the time it took to do all that? It's loss in production, loss in profits, loss. Like time is a big deal. That is the one thing we constantly, this is what I want to get to, constantly get cheated out of, and we think it's a good deal. Let's drop it there. And yet we know for a fact, see these things right here? What's that? That's great. We know for a fact time is our most precious commodity, yet we give it away all the time.
Yep. Okay, so that's Carlos's perspective on the return culture. He's talking about like cost, right?
Value,
Cost,
cost.
what it costs us to try to you know, save money or whatever. But I want to go into what that looks like in the mindset, right? It's the mindset of the return culture that affects our relationships and how, right? How does that diminish our, like, well, not diminish, like it prevents us from exercising a muscle of risk. It prevents us from exercising the muscle of risk because we don't have the confidence. So what do we not have the confidence in? If we look at relationships, and so a return culture of well, I mean, we see it all the time, right? People get married and they get divorced. They get married and they get divorced, or they just choose not to get married. They want to get married, but then they create all kinds of reasons of why, scapegoats, excuses, whatever. So there's that 100% across the board, everywhere, all the time. We deal with it. We literally have helped so many singles to get married, but we've also helped just shift mindsets. But confidence is a big one. So if I don't have the confidence to know that if I'm in a relationship and there are challenges, can I handle them? Do I have the strength and the grit to have a challenge in a relationship and come out on the other side? Do I have the commitment or the communication skills to move through whatever storm hits our home?
That's good. Do
I have the confidence? I would say in a return culture, there's not a lot of that. And that's what that's what fires me up. It's like, shit happens. Life happens. Trauma happens to all of us. But if we allow ourselves to remain in a mindset of a return culture, we're not even going to work a muscle. We're not even going to pick up a 5-pound weight that'll make us stronger in our relationships. We're not going to have self-control and shift our minds from my feelings are controlling what I do and don't do to I have the power to shift my mindset. I have the power. I have the self-control. I have the discipline. I have the ability. I can create the relationship that I want. I can communicate my needs. I can communicate how we have to learn it. It's a skill. We don't just naturally have it, right? It's just like, I mean, honestly, like I think about that because I return stuff on Amazon. I just did it. And how does that translate into, a business, your clientele, all of those things? Do we have the confidence to know that we can work through hard shit? Do we have the communication skills to work through hard shit?
So I want to chime in because I just saw something. I saw a pattern. So the return culture creates a no risk, creates an easy only culture. Mm-hmm. So I'm only going to do things that are easy
or comfortable.
That's right. And what's interesting is that you've convinced yourself and you believe that that's beneficial.
Well, and here's another thing. People aren't worth it.
It's not worth the work.
What value do we have in our relationships, in people, if they're not worth fighting for? If they're not worth me being uncomfortable, me learning a different skill, me stepping up in ways that I am not comfortable in, what am I communicating? The people in my life are not worth it.
Subconsciously, you may not even think you are.
It's so easy to set boundaries and cut people off. And listen, I am not in any way, shape, or form condoning abuse. Okay. There are seasons, there are things that are absolutely 100%, not tolerated. 100%. What I am talking about is the hiccups, the feelings, the frustrations, the anger, the dark side, the bitterness that rises up when people don't know how to communicate, when there are feelings that get hurt or offenses taken. That is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the things that fester. Okay. It is a skill. But it is a skill that has to be desired to learn. It has to be worked. It's a muscle that has to be worked. Man, I'm fired up.
I love it. So it comes to not valuing others, but then the reality of why we don't value others because we don't value ourselves.
Right. Sure.
And we
again goes back to confidence.
But then why do I have insecurities and lack of confidence about myself is always tied to trauma. Would you agree to that?
Yeah. Trauma, attacks on identity, all of those different things. It's a vicious cycle, right?
And it's interesting, recently we were listening to another training too about trauma. And they made a good point. Trauma speeds up results, either good or bad. You get to decide.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really fascinating when you think about that. And so we can literally take those trauma situations. And, again, I often don't talk about this. We don't talk about this, but if I think about my experience and Chantel's experience and what we've been through, and Chantel's expertise even in dealing with trauma, like before we were married, before we got together, she had been in the industry for over 10 years by the time we got together. And then I think it was like a year after we were together too. And then since then, she's been working with people. So 20 plus years that Chantel has worked with people in trauma. It started in working with abused and neglected children for over 11 years, managing a home, helping to manage a supervisor there, working with babies all the way up to kids who aged out of the system to was that 18 years old? And all in between. The home had all in between. We're talking babies too, like still
infants,
nursing potentially, but taken from the home because of the trauma or the abuse or the neglect. Crazy, right? That over 11 years, Chantel. So that's the experience and the expertise that she brought into our marriage to help me. And I'm super grateful for, I always say that. And help me to be a productive human being and help me go from triggers to triumph. But also then thousands and thousands of people that we've helped over the years, and all over the world, like loads of leaders and loads of common people just like you and me. But it's powerful because I recognize that sometimes we don't talk enough about this stuff. Because why the heck would you listen to her? Why would you listen to us? We're just people, right? But our experiences matter and what we've been through. And so with 20 plus years, she knows a few things about trauma and what it looks like and what our culture and our society looks like from dealing with it directly, one-on-one with people that have severe trauma. So how do we then get free from that? How do we recognize, right? It's first to recognize we have this return culture, no risk, easy only, no value of others, no value of self, not willing to do the hard things, right? Not willing to take the risk. How do we combat against that? What's the starting point with that?
Well, I think I think first
What's step one? How do I
awareness
fix this?
is
How do I fix
awareness
it?
and taking responsibility and recognizing that maybe you don't have the skill. And so in, you know, if we know, if we have awareness, right, and we're operating from a place of, you know, seeking understanding my own behavior in a relationship, or my response in a relationship, you know, we all have a fight or flight, right? We all have a fight or flight. So how are we operating? Are we operating from the flight mode most of the time? Are we operating from a fight mode most of the time, right? So there's that. There's isolating, there's all kinds of response, you know, that we can have. So
Would you say,
identifying what it is.
one question too, would you say a good marker too, is they're still single?
Yeah.
I mean, or they're still single, or maybe you've been married multiple times, or maybe you're in a marriage and you're absolutely miserable.
Yeah,
You're
I mean,
just
it's all
toxic
above.
and traumatic. Then, because again, looking at your current situation, I think is the first step. We do these calls with clients to see if it's a fit for us to work with them. And the very first thing we talk about is where they come from in their childhood. Now, a lot of people have great improved lives. However, that creates the story. And if you're not aware of your story, chances are you're not aware that your story is holding you back. And how can you get your story revealed to you? Somebody has to ask you hard questions. And you have to be willing to take a look at what you went through as a child.
I think that's a lot of times, you know, we don't know what we don't know. And it's painful and it's uncomfortable to be real, to allow ourselves to expose those parts of us, right? Expose, you know, and so that's why mindset is everything. Mindset is the key to all of it. We all have the ability to gain new skills, to exercise muscles and get stronger. Every single one of us, in every facet. It's our mind that will stop us from doing it. It's our mind and the cycle that we allow, the chatter that we allow, the record that is playing that we're listening to, right? We can change the record that's playing in our head, but we have to be willing to do it.
So that repeated message, it's safe to say, I think sometimes we talk about these things, we say fight or flight's going on, you're single, miserable in your current life. Your mindset, though, is what's key. The chatter, the repeated messages. I'm just taking notes and repeating what you said. So that would that be safe to say that's then even the story? The story of like your childhood keeps being repeated over and over and over. And then it's almost like you're grabbing a hold of that and continue to repeat it and talk about it and then look for it.
Sure.
Essentially.
Absolutely. But there's also the aspect of weakness. We've created, so the return culture has also created a lot of weakness.
Wimpy people.
Yeah.
Not willing to do hard things.
Yeah. Not willing to
good.
get out of your comfort zone, not willing to press in. It's okay. So my mom is 81 years old and she has drastically dwindled in strength and capability. That's what happens when we don't work a muscle. When we don't exercise, getting out of our comfort zone, then we get stuck in weakness. Our mind, our emotional capacity, our mental capacity, it all weakens. The muscles, it across the board weaken when we don't work them. So we have to start somewhere. The solution is to start somewhere, right? So it happens in the physical, but it also happens in the emotional. Emotions are a muscle we must work as well. Okay.
So when we essentially, I know you say triggers, I think triggers is a pretty common word.
Mhm,
Triggers are opportunities,
mhm.
right?
If
So
we
it's like,
see them that way,
but
they're not an
yeah.
opportunity to everyone.
So when we find ourselves in a situation that we're uncomfortable in, now situations, again, look, I think it's important for us to stress this because Chantel said this, but I wanted you to hear it again. Like if you're in a situation where you're physically being abused, um, like that's if there's abuse going on, that's we're not talking about okay, fly towards
Here,
the storm,
let me
right?
go, let me go here, okay? Because there's parameters, right? When I am a danger to myself or others, or I am in danger of my life or others, right? That's a in the world that I come from, abused and neglected children, right, in a facility. We saw all kind, I mean, we were treated all kinds of ways. Like there was so many manifestations of trauma response, right? Both verbally, emotionally, physically, you name it. But when it became a danger to myself or others, right? If a child was a danger to his or herself or the staff, that was when they had to be restrained, and that was when a whole another mode of operation came in. Okay, still very safe, very strategic in the training, but so recognizing that there are limits. There are also places where we're weak sauce. We are weak sauce as a society.
So if I would say if again the abuse, let's talk about what's practical. So if I don't feel comfortable around certain people, again, not talking about abuse here, but I just don't like how they do certain things, or maybe situations, being around groups of people or certain kind of people, right? We've talked about this, and it's interesting whether you don't like being around. It could be a racial thing. You don't feel comfortable around them. It could be a group of people, or it could be a certain way they do things, or certain sound or
There's so
culture.
many different factors,
Yeah,
right?
so it would be safe
That
to
we
say,
limit our
right?
exposure, if you will, right? We limit our exposure because we're uncomfortable.
So it's like it's if I look at it and go, oh, it's easy only. It's not working a muscle. If it's easy, is it building a muscle? Again, we're not talking about abuse, so making it clear. So it's like even with situation I feel uncomfortable in, and I know it's not bringing harm physically, but it's hard.
Right.
I need to be like the eagle. If you haven't studied the eagle, the bald eagle is most incredible, one of the most incredible animals, queen of the air, but they fly towards a storm. That's what I want to say about them. And we have some training on that. It's phenomenal. But again, be like the eagle. So we talk often say that, be like the eagle. And people are like, what does that mean? The eagle flies towards a storm. Well, because it's in flying towards that storm, we're willing to be uncomfortable.
Mhm.
We're willing
But
to
it's
learn
scary.
and grow.
We're willing to go into the scary part. Okay. Because I tell you what, in okay, let's take Carlos for example. He's a big man,
Thank you.
powerful,
That's what my wife says.
lion, right? Lion like, right? Well, what can that look like when he gets angry?
Yeah.
What can that look like when he is fully triggered? It can look very scary. It has and can look very, very scary. So I have had to press in to that, what can cause fear in me based on my past, my experiences, right? I can either allow that to paralyze me, right? And I can fight or flight. I can either run, take off, split, deuces, I'm out.
It's too hard.
This is too hard. You are too much. I'm disgusted, I'm angry, I'm all of these different things, right?
Yeah.
It's real and has happened,
Yeah.
you guys. Or I can press in and I can mindset, right? I can shift my mindset to a place of this is not about me. Okay. This is about his trigger.
Yeah.
What is happening for him in this moment? What is the root? What is happening there? And am I willing?
To help.
Am I willing
It's good.
to press in with a different lens or perspective? Or am I just going to see the behavior and say that's who he is?
This is powerful.
Okay.
It's really powerful.
Behavior is not an identity. Behavior is a response to trauma.
So good. So you're willing to fly towards the storm and do hard things, and you're going to grow. But Alice,
I'm going to strengthen. That's
right.
a muscle.
That's right.
That's a muscle I'm working. I'm strengthening. I'm
here's the other
exercising.
side of it. This is what's so powerful. This affects both sides of it. My story changes too.
Yeah.
That's the power of it. Because everyone potentially gets intimidated by Carlos, right? This loud, obnoxious person. And then all of a sudden she doesn't. And my story can change because she disrupted it. And she believed something different about me. And she believed in the potential.
Not only did I
in that
believe in that,
situation too.
I was willing to press in. So it's not just about being, okay, I'm going to support you in your trauma and your trauma behavior. And I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to trigger you because that's uncomfortable, right? It's no, we're going to handle this shit together.
That's right. It's good.
Why? Because I have confidence, I can communicate, and I'm committed.
You know, an easy example to even see that is if someone who's a thief and a liar gets told that all the time and then accused of it, the person just like, forget it, I might as well. And then they get treated that way and not trusted because of that. They just keep having that repeat over and over and over until somebody comes along that can help disrupt that and press in. Doesn't mean that they don't have to deal with the fact that that person's a thief and a liar and a cheat. They're gonna have to deal with it.
The behavior is real, right? And the feelings are real. They are valid. Your feelings are valid in the midst of all of it.
Yeah.
Okay. It doesn't mean the feelings aren't valid. It's just choosing to, okay, so how do you press in, right? You press in by number one, making a decision that, okay, this behavior that's coming out, I don't like. Okay. If I don't like this behavior, it hurts. It's, potentially offensive. It's like causing me anxiety, like all of these different things. But I am consciously making a decision that I'm going to strengthen my muscle. I'm going to work that muscle and I need to
But you also say,
so how do I press in?
Yeah.
Is when this behavior is flaring up, I'm choosing to not be offended. Okay. It's a conscious choice, you guys, because the natural human nature is to go into our own feelings and emotions. So it's making a conscious choice to see from the eagle's perspective, the bigger picture. This is my husband, so I know him. I know his heart. I know his history, right?
Yeah,
I know his past. I know his hurts, his hangups. That would be the first thing, is to know those things about the person. And if you don't know those things about the person and they're displaying this shit, get to know them. Ask questions so that you have understanding in the why the behavior is coming out. Okay. So that's one way to press in. And in the moment is not taking offense, but pressing in. creating a safe place, okay, and asking the questions. Expose the roots.
I got a question though.
Okay.
Wouldn't you agree though that a lot of times they want to do that, but they don't have the confidence because they don't have the personal identity first? Like you, for instance,
Sure.
you're a very confident woman. You know your identity, you know who you are, so you can push against this powerful lion. So if they're facing things and they can't find
But did I always have that?
You're right. It was developed, but what I'm saying to you is that like that even first step is like understanding if I'm not able to press in, it's probably because I don't have the confidence, communication, and the commitment skills.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
So I don't have my identity.
Somewhere.
I don't have my identity developed knowing who I am, which allows me then to stand firm in who I am. Would you agree with that? Like, because I see that a lot admittedly, Chantel and I have been on this journey helping people babe, next week, the week after 13 years. So awesome.
Yeah.
Seriously, it is super awesome. 13 years married, 14 and a half together. I always say that because we're about a year and a half together before we got married. But just a lot of what we did in the beginning, we were trying to work with couples, helping them with trauma, and they would be split up and they'd come back together. And what we found, we tried to work with them together as a couple. And we realized really quickly, after a few failed attempts, we realized while they're split up, or even while they're together, the best results come from us helping them with their personal identity first, individually. That's what I was going to bring out.
Absolutely.
That I agree with you 100%. I just want to remember that because some people watching you may be going like, well, shoot. But it's real, right? Dang it, you're frustrated and you're like, I just can't do it. I hate this person. And they come at me and I just hate them. I want to punch them in the face and instead I just leave because I don't want to deal with them. It's real because you can't even deal with yourself. So I think that's a big factor. Dealing with yourself first is what's key and priority. And we learned that it's crazy because it was like, I remember she and I having a conversation. I'm like, I can't keep doing this. First of all, I am addicted to winning. I love to win. Imagine that. I want to win so bad. I am. We are actually both very competitive. That might be a fact you don't know about my wife. But we're very competitive with each other in a fun way. We should record that sometimes. Because I don't think people get to see that. I think the best one was that Topgolf little side story.
Oh my gosh. We don't have time for your side story.
We're top golfing, right? And she is like, she went first. I was so glad she went first. She's like, can't even hit it. And I'm like, oh, babe, you got this. You got this. She's like, well, I don't even know how to do that. I'm like, just try it. She's like, come show me. Come show me. Listen. So somebody tried to help her because I don't know. That's like the blind leading the blind, right? So then it's finally my turn. We were with a group of people and they looked freaking good. And finally I go up and she's like, you suck so bad.
Loud.
Why? We're in our own studio. I don't care. It's our house.
Sound goes out.
That's okay. But listen, the bottom line, it was awesome. She didn't know I sucked worse than her. And she even said, she was like, oh, feeling bad. She's like, well, help me. I don't know how to do this. And I'm like, can somebody else help her?
Yeah, for the dude who played every sport in high school and like he can't hit a golf ball. He's like, oh.
So then she beat me in points, right? And then I'm like, anyways, that's competitive. But the point being about why were we talking about competition? Oh, I like to win. So we do this a lot. Like there's certain things but we did, when we saw these relationships come back together and we were like super pumped. We're like, goodness, this is so good. What we're creating is so good because we were talking to them about what we do to have Epic and connect. And then they would split back. And some of them even went through a divorce after we helped them. We're like, oh shit, this sucks. And I was like, after about 2 or 3 of those, I'm like, we gotta take another fresh look at this. What's happening? Part of it was they stopped, right? That's a big thing. They stopped doing what brought them back together. They would stop doing. That's number one. I'm not gonna give them off the hook. But what we recognize is they would stop doing it because of the identity crisis that they were having. It would come back together. It would be good. It would be really good.
Well, and that's the identity being challenged, right? It's, anytime our identity is challenged, we have a hit, like a literal, like, piercing to our confidence. It happens. We all have it.
Mm-hmm.
Carlos and I included.
And by the way, when you're married, and you have someone very close to you, they know your dark shit.
I know the exact, like, I know exactly where
your
his
weaknesses. Oh my gosh. My wife, she's so intelligent. She doesn't do it. But if we didn't have the heart and the ability and the desire to connect and constantly looking for ways to connect, and I'll give each other, these are all tricks and strategies and things, by the way, she would totally be able to just, annihilate me. And I the same with her. Mm-hmm. She knows my weaknesses. And I've talked about it a lot, like about my parenting, right? So then I overcompensate. I'm always talking about parenting skills a lot. Or even in my confidence as a husband, right? And so a lot of those things, I have a lot of it now because I've worked on it so much.
Because we've pressed in, we've worked the muscle.
What's is uncomfortable.
We've flown towards the nitty gritty, angry, traumatic, experiences and triggers and whatnot. So, questions to ask when you're pressing in, look a lot like, just really like, hey, we're a team.
So good.
Okay.
Reminding them.
And I will say, like, especially when somebody's triggered and riled up, body language can either fuel a fire or it can settle it. So body language and even so this is where mindset and choice comes in. To even when you feel angry, even when you feel repulsed, even when you feel all of your own feelings,
feel attacked, right?
You feel attacked. You feel, the mind is so powerful. If we only knew half of what the mind can do and say, okay, this is not about me. I'm gonna choose to press in.
Well, I'm gonna just share. I'm gonna give you an example. Okay. This is a great example. Years ago, I found some stuff on our boys. Our boy now is 23 years old, professional athlete, work in North Carolina. Mateo, he's a professional rugby player. We get to go see him next week, but he was younger, and I found some stuff on his phone, and I freaked out. We're talking like next level freak out. I think he was about 16, 17, something like that. 15? So that would have been about 8 years ago. Now I'm just trying to get timelines for you guys. So about 8 years ago, and I'm just like, it was like some weird stuff that I totally thought he was into porn and that he was just like freaking into the darkest, deepest cavern of porn because I found something about something with some guy talk, some bantering. Now I can't even remember what it was because it wasn't that big a deal. But in my mind, because of what I had been through attached to porn and sexual oppression and addictions and stuff, like all of a sudden it was the biggest mountain on the planet. And my son is the most evil son on the planet. Like it just became this huge,
it goes into
monstrous trauma
too. His failure as a parent.
Then as a dad, that's where I was going to go with this. As a dad, I suck. I have failed to be a good father. And so I'm freaking out on him. I'm freaking out on Chantel. I'm like, this again, we got it. I mean, so like she said, I'm a freak and I'm freaking out. No, I'm saying it. I'm like she said, though, that I can be. I was. I'm a big guy. And so, but I'm yelling. I'm angry. Mateo's bound to his room. I'm gonna destroy his phone. Like I'm about to do. I'm about to hit it with a hammer and like tear shit off the phone. It's like because I literally felt like I worked so hard to be a better dad, especially in this marriage, when you know my trauma from my previous marriage and failures I had there. And so I worked so hard to get to a good place here. And then I felt like a failure. I felt like, but in the moment, I thought it was Mateo's fault. And then Chantel's like trying to help me to calm down. I'm like, it's your fault too. Like, then I'm going to blame everyone else. And then really what was going on was I hated myself in that moment because I feel like I failed as a father. And it literally was guys bantering back and forth, some sexual stuff.
So what your response was is you laid down and you turned
That's
over.
right. So in the end, this big old blow up, he's banned to his room. We go to bed finally, angry. I'm angry. And at first, Chantel is obviously responding. You reap what you sow. So she's responding to me. See how she can totally remember this too. She knows exactly the story I'm going to say. And I'm going to roll over and I'm like, ah. I'm like, I hate you essentially. And I'm like, I am mad. In that moment, I hated myself. I learned that. But in the moment, I hated my son, I hated her, and it was all their problems and their fault, and I wanted a divorce. In the sense in my head, this is what I'm thinking. I'm not shouting those things, but I'm feeling that.
No, but that's what the silent
yes
was.
Yes.
And
I'm
so
done.
that
I'm out.
Him laying down in bed, silent, stiff, rolled over was a trigger for me.
Mm-hmm.
Huge trigger for me. Like
Ignoring
that was
her.
the kind of stuff that would set me off big time.
And she wanted to, admittedly. We talked about this several times because this is such a big pivotal moment for us.
Mm-hmm.
And in that moment, with all of her wisdom, she chose differently. She chose to fly at the storm and do something different.
What did I do?
Do you want to say it?
No. I want you to say it.
She spoke into what the truth is that she in that moment, and it will make me emotional talking about it because it's real. She just started to speak life into me and said, you know, you're a good father. She all of a sudden had like an awareness, an epiphany that it wasn't about Mateo. It wasn't about her. It was really about my lack of belief of myself as a father. And she just spoke life into that father and said, you're such a good father. You've done well with your son. You've loved him well. You've taught him well. And it was so precious because I'll tell you now, fast forward the next day, and that all was beautiful. I literally broke down and I said, I apologized to her for freaking out. She was so right. It's almost like she brought me back to humanity and reality. Because in that moment, I was lost in trauma, lost in the trigger, lost in the past
Lost in
of
yourself.
my own issues with all that stuff.
That's what we do. We get lost in ourselves.
Yeah.
When we're in a trigger.
And so she spoke life into my identity in that moment. And I was like, whoa, she's right? That's really who I am. But in that moment, I was taken back to my old self and what I went through, not even my son. And it's interesting because I apologized to Mateo and I told him what happened. I literally explained like the trigger that happened, the trauma and the things I did and past experiences that caused me to then freak out and think. And he said to me, he's like, he literally, do you remember what he said? Mm-hmm. He said to me, he goes like, Dad, I'm not like that. I don't have challenges with this. It just was a couple us guys bantering. And he was like, I love you. I appreciate what you are, but that's not who I am. And it's almost like he deflected what I was trying to put on him too, right? Because it's kind of like that thief or that liar. You call him a thief and a liar, then they, just forget it. But in that moment, because I was willing to let him in on my trauma and let him in on my awareness and my weakness of what I was experiencing in that moment, that it really wasn't about him. He was able to say, yeah, Dad. I was like, this isn't even me. It's just some bantering, but like it was this other guy. It wasn't even Mateo.
So he didn't own his stuff, right? He didn't own his story. He didn't make his story his own, which is really powerful. But
so it did. It shifted a lot of things. And in that moment too, from there, it was like, for some reason that it created a new traumatic situation, but one that was a blessing. You follow me? So now it's a marker in my life. And it was a moment in time where even though I was recreating the trauma, she made it a different experience.
So that's where we have to be aware and kind of, if we understand what our triggers are, then we also understand that we have the power to create a new story in that trigger.
So good.
Right? So in that moment, I had to make a choice. Am I going to respond like all of the other cycles I would have responded?
And rightly so, she could have.
Or am I going to do something different and I'm going to create a new story in this trigger, right? In this scenario where we're both triggered. So it's conscious, it's your mindset. The whole purpose of this is our mindset.
Yes.
A return culture of we don't just walk away, we press in. And why? Why? Because this man is so valuable in all his flaws,
Yes.
in all his trauma, right? And the ability to press into that, the skill set to press into that has saved our marriage time and time again, and vice versa.
Yes.
Okay. Because I promise you, I have plenty of shit too. Okay. We all do. You're not alone.
And I would be safe to say in closing that with the greater the risk, the greater the reward. And that's true even in relationship. Like we have, you look at the return culture. Are you willing to take a risk on something and go all in? And again, going back to even the cheap mentality, value, quality, but take a risk and be willing to go for it and watch the return on your investment.
And if something is not working, maybe we just need to get a skill set in a different realm. Or, if you have a grocery store and you see an employee who is struggling in their role, right?
Yes.
Maybe they just need a different position.
That's right.
Do we give up on them because they're, not thriving in that position? Or do we see if maybe there's another realm that they can thrive in?
So good.
How can we do that with relationships, with our families, with the people that we are around? That's commitment. That's commitment to human beings. That's commitment to relationships that we have, because we love people. And sometimes it's true. We have to love people from a distance, and then we can reevaluate. We can see clearer. We can gain perspective,
Yes.
right? Like the eagle, take a
good.
bird's eye view and see, okay, so what is the most beneficial way to move forward? But am I moving forward and creating the relationship that I want, or am I returning them because they're not worth it?
That's good. Just beneficial. We hope that it has helped you to gain some skills for your relationships. Because here at Epic Your Life, it really is about from single to married, creating extraordinary. And it takes skills, strategies. It does. And if you want to learn some more of those, you can join us over on school.com, spelled with a K, SKOOL.com, Epic Your Life. And we'd be glad to connect with you more. We've got more content and more information there for you to learn the skills and strategies to have epic relationships.